Hey y'all, welcome to Soccer for Us. This is Bart Keeler. It's just me this episode. I'm going to be going through the U.S. U-23's 1-0 win over Costa Rica in Olympic qualifying down in Mexico. But before we do that, please subscribe to Soccer Down Here on the podcatcher that you like the most. You'll get not only this show, but you'll get every episode of the daily Soccer Down Here show and Soccer Over There, as well as Written on the Pitch with Jessica Sharman. So give us a subscribe so you get all the content coming out of the STH network. Before we get into breaking down this U.S. win over Costa Rica, I do have two pieces of notes to pass along. The first is that we have another friendly scheduled for the April window for the United States women's national team. Last episode, we said that they would be playing Sweden in a friendly. Now they have added a second friendly in Europe during that window. It will be against France on April 13 in Le Havre. That'll be at 3 o'clock Eastern on ESPN2. So you have matches against Sweden and France. Those are pretty top tier opponents. Obviously, France not going to the Olympics this year because we knocked them out of the World Cup. And they were not one of the top three finishers from UEFA. That's how UEFA determines Olympic qualification. They say whoever the top three finishers are at the Women's World Cup, that's who goes. So obviously us beating France in the quarterfinals knocked them out of that. And again, just to remind everyone, we defeated France in the quarterfinals on their home soil in Paris 2 summers ago en route to our 4th World Cup championship. Just felt like we need to reiterate that. Then on Sunday, May 30, the U.S. men will play Switzerland in Switzerland. Time to be announced. They haven't quite figured that out yet, but we will play Switzerland in Switzerland as a tune-up for the Concacaf Nations League Final Four. Now, this is a little bit interesting because obviously the Nations League will take place here in the United States. Reportedly, according to Victor Montagnani, president of Concacaf, will be in Chicago. I don't know. It's not on any official publication, but he said that. So take him at his word. He is the president of the organization. The 2 matches, the semifinal against Honduras and hopefully the final against either Mexico or Costa Rica, will take place on U.S. soil. And yet they're playing a friendly in Europe on May 30, which is like 4 days before the semifinal. So I think this really does tip Berhalter's hand, and he's kind of said as much throughout the time, but it really does just indicate that we will have a pretty much all European-based roster. At least, let me rephrase that. We should be bringing our top team to the Nations League. Our A squad will be at this Nations League, and most of the A squad players, the top players that we have in our pool, are playing in Europe. So it's not surprising that he would have a training camp, and a friendly in Europe that's right at the end of their domestic season. It'll be after Champions League and UEFA League finals. So after the season has ended, they'll have a short training camp in Europe, play Switzerland in Switzerland, and then fly to Chicago for a game 4 days later against Honduras in the Nations League final. We still are expecting them to announce another friendly that will follow the Nations League finals. Greg Berhalter did mention, and it was released way back at the U.S. Soccer Annual General Meeting, it was announced that they would have a match against a third opponent in that same window. We don't know when that will be, or who that will be, I should say. We do have a tip that it will be June 9. So several matches, 4 in total at the end of May and start of June for the Nations League window. So that's the news that I have for you. Other than that, let's talk about this U.S. win over Costa Rica. The U-23 is getting the job done. It wasn't pretty, but they win 1-0 over Costa Rica on Thursday, March 18, 2021, down in Guadalajara, Mexico at Estadio Jalisco. This stadium is at altitude, as most places in Mexico are. It is hot. It was hot enough for them to have a hydration break during the match, a local start time of 3:30. So it's steamy, to put it mildly, down there in Guadalajara, which is fine. I mean, look, you can talk about how the weather that our players have been used to here in the States is not great. But if you're Concacaf and you have an opportunity to put a tournament in a location that is good weather, I mean, it's going to be guaranteed. You're going to take it. You know, the altitude is a little whatever, but you're in a fine location and you're playing in two fantastic soccer stadiums. So the setting itself was interesting for the United States. Obviously, Costa Rica should have that advantage for a number of reasons. One, they are a little bit more acclimated to the weather, the temperature itself. And on top of that, they've been, most of these players anyway, I think all but three are domestic players for the Costa Rican domestic league. We mentioned 7 from champions Alajuelense. So these players are playing currently. They have match minutes behind them since the new year. They are match fit by no, like they are ready to go. In the United States, most of our players outside of the ones who played in this match anyway, only 3 really had been playing at all recently. And even of those 3, only 1 has been involved in any meaningful minutes for their club in the past month. So the U.S. was really, I don't want to say behind the 8 ball, because I really don't like the narrative of like, oh, well, all these reasons why we could have done poorly. Yeah, look, you were not quite at the fitness level that the other team would have been, but you also had a friendly and a training camp back in January where a lot of these guys played and trained. Then you had a training camp leading up to this for a couple of weeks. So maybe not match fit, but hey, you've been working on fitness for a couple months. Even if you weren't, you would have been starting your MLS training camp. So you would be getting back into fitness. It's definitely a theme that this game saw play out, that, we definitely were a little unfit and unprepared to play from a fitness standpoint. But at the end of the day, these players are good. And this roster of MLS starters should be better than a roster of Costa Rican starters. And I stand by that. I mean, every single player who played for this team on Thursday is a starter for their MLS club, or at least a very significant contributor to their MLS club. U.S. gets the 1-0 win. Let's go through the lineups, the timeline, and then I'll give some more thoughts on the game. The U.S. lined up in a 4-3-3. Surprisingly to, I think, a lot of people, David Ochoa got the start, and I think we have to say that was the best decision that Jason Kreis has made in a very long time. Thought that JT Marcinkowski would start just based on what Kreis had said, but it was the youngster David Ochoa, who is the best goalkeeper of the 3 that were down there. I don't think anyone doubts that, but Marcinkowski with a couple years on him and definitely some experience at this level. But Ochoa, starting a goal, had a fantastic game. The defense from right to left, Aaron Herrera, Justin Glad, Mauricio Pineda, and Sam Vines. In the midfield, you had Jackson Ewell as your deeper midfielder, Hassani Dotson and Georgie Mihailovich starting in front of him. And then your wingers on the right, Benji Michel, and on the left, Jonathan Lewis. And the striker was Jesus Ferreira. Not a whole lot of surprises. I wasn't personally expecting Dotson or Michel to play. I was a little, not mad that they were starting, but concerned. Dotson did okay. I don't think Michel did much of anything that would tell me that he deserves to start next game. But look, the guys got it done. I will say, we'll talk about this later, but overall, no one played super well, and the team as a whole struggled in possession, which is, what Berhalter and by proxy Kreis wants this team to do. Costa Rica lined up in a 4-5-1. Their goalkeeper, Kevin Chamorro, started. Ian Smith, Aaron Salazar, Fernan Ferrayon, and Yergin Roman were your backline. In the midfield, the 5 in the midfield, really it was like 3-2-1, but we'll go with it. On the right, Luis Diaz, the captain. Jefferson Brenes, Bernal Alfaro, and Randall Leal kind of played in the middle. And then Adrian Martinez was out left, and up top, the lone striker, Manfred Ugalde. So Costa Rica, I mean, this 4-5-1 has kind of been typical for them. They've flirted with like a 4-5-1 or a 5-4-1 for a few years now, but this 4-5-1 really has been a hallmark of what they've done. Really good central midfielders, a pretty competent striker, and wingers who are pacey. This was a very typical Costa Rican team. They got after the press very well, and they were, very tenacious on defense when they needed to be. A little casual in possession, not super awesome building out of the back, but midfield, those on the wing, and their striker played very well during the game. So let's hit the timeline so that we can kind of go through some highlights of the match. Honestly, I thought the U.S. started off really well. The second minute, Ferreira, through pressure, nips a ball from the center back who casually tried to play out of the back. Got a shot off. It wasn't saved. It went wide. It hit the post. It goes like right off the post. We weren't able to follow up and get a shot off. But I mean, really, second minute, U.S. probably could have been up 1-0. Then we start kind of giving the ball away in some bad areas. 7th minute from a throw in. Vines throws it in, gets the ball back, and just makes an errant pass right to a Costa Rican attacker who slips in their teammate. But before he could get to it, Ochoa collects it. This really was a theme. We did struggle to put passes together throughout the entire match, and it was really frustrating. 17th minute, Pineda coughed up a just really lazy, unfocused dribble. Caught on the dribble. Pineda and Martinez takes it off his foot. He sprints on goal, but fortunately, Ochoa makes a huge save. Glad had recovered, but basically Martinez was in on goal against Ochoa, and Ochoa wins the 1v1 battle. Then in the 35th minute, the U.S. gets their goal, makes it 1-0. Marcio Pineda hits a diagonal to Sam Vines, who takes a touch on the touchline, takes it into space, attacks that space. There's really no one there, so he goes toward the box, gets right into the area, crosses it along the ground, past like everyone, but Jesus Ferreira, who was making a late run, and he slots a very nice ball home, takes it. Instead of going back across the face of goal, he actually uses the ball to slot it home into the near side where the defenders weren't and the goalkeeper wasn't. So very heads-up finish from him. I really like this goal because it's kind of what Berhalter and this system is supposed to be. You get your overlapping fullback coming up. You have wingers and a central midfielder who make the runs into the box. But your striker isn't there yet. So really your striker is that late arriving runner. And that's what happened in this goal. You had Michelle and Dotson who had made their runs into the box to occupy the center backs. You also had Lewis at the top of the box on Vines' side. So, they had to account for 3 attackers in and around the penalty area. But Ferreira kind of stayed a little bit wide right and delayed his run. So right after Michel started his run hard toward the goal, Ferreira kind of just curled his a little bit in and was right at the penalty spot, really, but a little right of it, and slots it home. Very smart finish, very good play, very good build-up from the U.S. This is the type of goal that you're going to be seeing a lot of this year as we watch the U.S. play in this system. So it's 1-0 at the half, and honestly, the halftime, I felt okay. We knew this was going to be a tough match against Costa Rica. I mentioned the reasons why it would be a little bit more difficult than normal. But at the end of this half, you had to feel slightly, confident that we were going to win because all of the problems that Costa Rica created were self-inflicted by the United States. It was a bad pass, a bad giveaway, getting the ball taken off your foot in possession. Costa Rica did a pretty decent job of forcing the center backs, Pineda and Glad, to have to play and bypass Jackson Ewell. They kind of man-marked Jackson Ewell. I do think that if that were to happen, like you could look at this and say, oh man, they figured it out. Costa Rica did. Yeah, that it will be problematic if Ewell or Tyler Adams are man-marked in a real competitive match at the senior level. But I will say that Pineda and Glad did not show very well passing the ball out of the back, and I do think that the U.S. has better passing fullbacks available to them, not at this tournament. So I think it really had more to do with Pineda and Glad not being super comfortable on the ball, which is a little bit weird for Pineda because that was his strength coming in. But I do think that was more of the contingent on the fullbacks, not necessarily on Ewell or anything else. But like I said, we kind of had created our own mess, but we got the goal and we looked promising a couple other times to, create chances and get shots off. So at halftime, I was feeling pretty okay. I got to be honest. But then the second half started and Costa Rica just took off flying. 48th minute for Costa Rica, Randall Leal from Nashville finds himself kind of alone at the top left corner of our box. He turns around and fires a shot low to the far post, and Ochoa makes a fantastic outstretched save. I think it's probably his best save of the day, honestly. He had 9, but this one so early in the second half was vital, and it was a really well red shot from Ochoa, and he gets a nice big right paw on it to keep it out of the far corner of his net. 51st minute, Costa Rica pressuring high up the field. Justin Glad makes a really bad pass. He's in basically almost on the goal line, but he's in our box off of a goal kick. The pressure got to him. He made a bad pass right to a Costa Rican attacker, which takes a heavy touch, and then it goes to Ugalde, I think, who tries to hit a shot, deflects off of, I believe, Pineda, and it goes right to Luis Diaz, who takes a shot from just inside the box, and Ochoa saves it. Pretty comfortable, but saves it nonetheless. 59th minute, we got subs. Perea comes on for Georgie Mihailovich, and Sebastian Salcedo comes on for Benchy Michel. I don't think Mihailovich had a good game whatsoever. It really was problematic to see us not being able to use Georgie Mihailovich that well. I didn't think that he showed what we needed him to show, right? He's a very experienced youth national team player. He has caps at the senior national team. He was, a starter for Chicago Fire, and he just got a transfer to Montreal for a pretty good sum of money. He's supposed to be a very promising attacking midfielder. He didn't show it. He didn't show it at all. Michel, I don't think he really proved anything either. He's just an attacking player who's pretty athletic, so maybe in a press that's better than Salcedo, but I thought Salcedo, coming on even in the 30 minutes, played better than Michel. So yeah, it just was, I don't think anyone had a great night, but I really think that Mihailovich and Michel looked bad. Probably the two worst performances outside of our center backs, in my opinion. 65th minute, we had another chance to score. Honestly, this probably should have been our second goal. Hassani Dotson and I believe it was Jonathan Lewis play a nice little 1-2 through ball, 1-2 in the midfield, and then a through ball from Dotson to Ferreira. Dotson plays it like maybe a step inside of our half. Nice little bent through ball to Ferreira, who is behind the Costa Rican defense. It was a great run. Takes a touch that's just slightly too heavy. The touch leads him almost into the box, so he's not able to beat the keeper to the ball. Really, he gets a toe poke on it, but it wasn't that great of an effort. Probably should have done better. Could have been our second goal had he been able to control that pass from Dotson a little bit better. A chance that goes begging for the United States. 67th minute, we sub Soto on for Ferreira, so that was basically Ferreira's last action. Soto didn't do anything spectacular, but we also didn't create a whole lot of chances in general. A minute after that sub, 68th minute, Costa Rica off of I think a throw-in just kind of dumps the ball long to Luis Diaz on the right wing, who beeps everyone, Sam Vines included, Mauricio Pineda included, gets into the box, cuts back from the right to his left, and takes a shot to the far post, but it goes wide, thankfully. Ochoa did not save it, but it went wide. I don't know if Ochoa would have saved it. It was a great shot, so got lucky there. A little bit calmer there. Constant pressure from Costa Rica, but we did okay to keep them out of great positions to score. 82nd minute comes around. We make two more subs. You do get 5 in this tournament. Julian Araujo on for Jonathan Lewis, who I thought was okay. And then Cardoso comes on for Dotson, who of the midfielders probably played the best. I don't know if that's necessarily saying anything, but he was definitely better than Georgie Mihailovich. So that was 82nd minute. 84th minute, really the last real chance for Costa Rica, off of a corner kick, an outswinging corner kick headed down toward the post where it came from. An unmarked attacker just happens to be inside of our goal area, like 3 yards from goal. He chests it into the post, and then it comes back off of him and goes out of play for a goal kick. I think this player would have been offside. If I remember the freeze frame correctly, the moment that the ball was headed, he was absolutely in an offside position. The flag didn't go up. It was called a goal kick. So I don't know what Concacaf officials would have called on that, but it should have been an offside had the ball not gone out for a goal kick. A lot of times referees will just play the goal kick. There's no need to have offside, especially at that area where he would have been in the box, just because the result is going to be the same. You're going to have a free kick coming out, and technically, it's basically an indirect free kick anyway. But that's a good time to remind people that we do not have VAR in this tournament. So had that gone in, we would have had to have the assistant referee on that side put his flag up and make the call. He didn't. I don't know if that was, again, because the ball just went out for a goal kick, so what's the point? But yeah, that was a little bit of a uncomfortable situation. It did not go in, thankfully. Costa Rica kept scoreless. We see out the game and win 1-0. So let's go through the stats real quick. I know this is a little bit boring, but I do want to it tells the story, right? U.S. in possession had 46% of possession, Costa Rica with 54%. It felt like Costa Rica had more possession at times, but it also felt like there were periods of the match where the U.S. did well to control the tempo and get their foot on the ball and possess, especially at the beginning and toward the end of the first half. But on the whole, I think Costa Rica had more control of the match. They also had 12 shots to our 7, 9 of those on goal to our 1. Both teams hit the post once. I mentioned the one from Costa Rica and Ferreira in the second minute hitting the post. Those technically count as shots not on target, but worth mentioning because they were close. The one stat that I think really tells this game very well was steals. The United States only had 10 steals. Costa Rica had 21. Now, both of these teams, like a lot of teams in the world, want to play an aggressive pressing style. So in that type of system, you expect to have more steals, at least more disrupted passes, which lead to steals, right? The U.S. only forced 10 steals, whereas Costa Rica forced 21. Now, a lot of those are bad passes, and I do think that, again, Glad and Pineda proved that they weren't very comfortable playing out of the back like this. But Costa Rica forcing 21 steals did lead to a lot of their shots, right? We mentioned 12 shots, 9 on target. A lot of those came from a steal, came from a bad pass, came from taking it off a foot of a defender after a bad touch. So it really was concerning for the U.S. that we weren't able to start possession well. I think that's the biggest thing. We weren't able to start possession well. Once we did, we were okay. We were able to progress the ball a little bit better. We were able to create attacking options and attacking moments, but it really was a struggle for us to play from the defense to the midfield because Costa Rica man-marked Ewell, so he wasn't really able to receive that ball, and he can't force it there. And then you couple that with the fact that Glad and Pineda are not super great passers or balls with balls at their feet, apparently. Again, we thought that was Pineda's strong suit. When you combine that with the fact that Ewell is being man-marked and not really able to pass it to, these defenders, the center backs, have to play more line-breaking passes. And sure, it's just bypassing Ewell, but you're trying to find Mihailovich, you're trying to find Dotson and maybe some wingers, maybe even Ferreira, and they just weren't able to do that consistently, and they turned the ball over too many times. Passing percentage, again, this is a stat that I think tells the game pretty well. Costa Rica passed at 90%. In fact, I think all three, their two wingers and their striker had a 100% pass completion rates. The U.S. passed at 77%, and on the flip side, Lewis and Michelle passed at like 50 to 70%. So that's not very good at all from your attacking players, that you're not able to connect that well. So again, this pass percentage, 77 to 90 in favor of Costa Rica, is not a good look for the United States. But at the end of the day, you won. You got a 1-0 victory in the game you had to win. This was the must-win game. It's not Mexico. This was the must-win game because you didn't want Mexico to have to be the must-win game. You've got the 3 points. You've got a goal to the good. You didn't give up a goal, which is actually a plus. Dominican Republic did score a penalty against Mexico. I would like to think that we could also hold them scoreless if we tidy up our own mistakes. So you could potentially go 2 games in a row without conceding. That's good. That's a very good thing. You went through this first match without just conceding a goal. You only scored 1. You didn't create that many chances, but you got a goal. You won. That's what matters. The center backs weren't very good. I think that's the biggest takeaway you can have. Our center backs were not very good in possession. And I don't think they necessarily did a poor job defending Costa Rica. I think the problem was their defending was so reactionary because it was off of a turnover. Pineda and Glad got beat a bit for pace. I think we knew that would be something that would be a problem for this team. Sam Bynes is not the fastest guy ever, and neither is Herrera. So that's not altogether surprising. But the center back play, especially from their possession, was not very good at all. And that's very concerning as you go against even Dominican Republic, who, if they see this and they're able to pressure you, because, you can press without being a skilled soccer player, right? You just need to know when to release, when to step, when to put in a pressure, when to back off. That has nothing to do with your ability to take a first touch, ability to really to complete a pass. So the U.S. has to clean up their playing out of the back, because if they don't, they're going to give Dominican Republic some chances, and you don't want that. Like I said, I felt like we just struggled to start possession. When we finally did, we were okay. Hopefully Jackson Ewell is a little bit more free in the midfield against Dominican Republic, although they may also man mark him. So that's going to require guys like, if Georgie Mihailovich starts, to be a little bit more dynamic in midfield. But, again, we won. And that's the biggest takeaway. The wingers weren't as good as I hoped. I told you about the terrible passing numbers. Lewis and Michel just not very good. I do think that Sebastian Saucedo would be a welcome benefit to this team. I think his quality on the ball and in possession is just a little bit higher than Benji Michel or Jonathan Lewis, but specifically Michel. I don't think he's necessarily like, if we put him in, we're going to score a bunch of goals. I don't think that's what he is, but he just allows us to be a little bit more calm and keep possession better. Some other thoughts, some individual player thoughts. David Ochoa should now be a household name, I hope. Like, he played phenomenally. He had 9 saves, several that were huge, big saves, proved why he got the start, and proved why, for a lot of people, we think he's the best young goalkeeper. Definitely think he's the best goalkeeper that the U.S. has in the next generation, if you will. So you have Stefan, Horvath, and Turner, who are your 3 right now. But the next generation, David Ochoa is it. I think he's better than Marcinkowski. Definitely think he's better than Freeze or any of the others that have been called in. I'm glad he got an opportunity, and I'm very glad he showed out. He's also very decent with his feet, so that's good as a goalkeeper in this system. Georgie Mihailovich, on the other hand, is rapidly falling down the depth chart for any position on any of the teams that he could play for. He's been around in the youth system. Again, like I mentioned, he got a pretty nice transfer fee for his move from Chicago to Montreal, proving that, he should be a quality player, and he just fails to show that at the national team level. And, I do think that even at MLS, his numbers aren't super awesome. He doesn't, in Chicago, he wasn't playing for a great team the past few years. I get that. But he hasn't proved anything to warrant the hype and the consideration that he continually gets from U.S. coaches. It wouldn't surprise me if he's not starting next game. He wasn't very good, and we need someone who's better. If Jackson Ewell is being taken out of the game due to man marking, then you have to have someone else able to run that midfield, because if someone's man marking Ewell, that's one less defender who can try to win a ball off of you. I don't know. I'm very disappointed with him, to be quite honest. Also think that Jason Price is, I don't want to say maybe a little bit out of his depth. He definitely feels like he's being outclassed. I don't have as much confidence in him as I would any other coach. He's kind of lost his touch as a manager, in my opinion. That sounds like a really harsh hot take, but his time in New York City wasn't great. His time in Orlando started off well and then just imploded. He got lucky to get this gig, and I think honestly, managing the Inter Miami, reserve team in USL 1 might be where he belongs, which is sad because I had a lot of hope for him as, an American coach in MLS and at the national team level. But, whatever, he got a team to win a game that we needed to win. And that's the end all be all of this discussion. We didn't play super awesome. It certainly wasn't a good showing, but we got 3 points. We kept a clean sheet. You're second in the group now to Mexico. And he did the hardest thing, right? The hardest challenge of this tournament was to beat Costa Rica. Because now you set yourself up with an opportunity to get 2 wins with very few goals conceded when you play Dominican Republic next. Hopefully a match with some recovery time and a little bit of tweaking, you're improved to the next game. And you can have a better performance against a weaker Dominican Republic side. It gives you a chance to, with this win over Costa Rica, it gives you a chance to possibly even fight for a first place spot in this group. Mexico and Costa Rica play on Sunday. You have to beat the Dominican Republic so that result doesn't matter, but the result does matter for you as you look toward that final match day, right? If Costa Rica beats Mexico and they're on 3 points, both of them, that's problematic for you because Costa Rica plays Dominican Republic on the final match day and you play Mexico. One of those games is a lot easier. But if, Costa Rica don't win, even if they draw Mexico, you're already, and you beat Dominican Republic, you're above Costa Rica in points. They can't eclipse you on points, right? They'll only be at most on 4 points if they draw Mexico. And then you're just, fending off a Hungary Mexican team on the last match day. But even then, it's not that important because you don't have to beat Mexico to advance then. It's great. You could possibly have 2 wins after the Dominican Republic game. You have one, you go get your second, you get 6 points. That basically guarantees you're advancing from the group. It really does, especially with goal differential. So that's the big thing is you got to have a good performance defensively against Dominican Republic so that you can keep those low goals against number and, help your goal differential. Because Mexico right now has a +3 goal differential, beating Dominican Republic 4-1. So yeah, that's the standings and the scenarios. I don't know too many changes from a lineup perspective I would make for the next match. Part of that is because you'd rather these guys play these 2 matches and then figure out who needs a rest for the Mexico match, right? Hopefully, again, if you win both of these, you can rest players in that final match day because at the end of the day, the result is not that vital. And ultimately what matters is that semifinal win. So you can rest some guys, possibly, sit a guy who has a yellow card. So yeah, I think that you won't see too many lineup changes, but I will tell you a few that I think I would make. I do want to start Justin Glad because he was the only player who picked up a yellow card for the U.S. and you'd rather start him in this game. And if he picks up that yellow card, he's suspended for the Mexico match. You don't want him to. But being suspended for the Mexico match is not as important as him being available for the semifinal. So you don't want to have yellow card accumulation be a problem. So if you play him the first 2 matches and then sit him for the Mexico match, he shouldn't have a problem to play in the semifinals against whomever from Group B. So what does that mean? I think Henry Kessler comes in for Mauricio Pineda. I don't think that's a great backline, but I also don't think that Dominican Republic has attackers who will be threatening. They're going to be a little bit pacey. I think that would be the big disadvantage between Glad and Kessler is they're not as fast, but Pineda's not that fast either. So that's just a problem you have with the center back group. So I would start Kessler in place of Pineda. I would also start Julian Araujo in place of Aaron Herrera, just because I think this would be good experience for Araujo. And I think that he might offer you more going forward, but he also offered you a little bit more control in the back to help build out, because that was a problem that you had against Costa Rica. So I think he would be a better passing option out of the back and be better to work with those center backs to help them a little bit. The only other one that I think would probably be made, I would bench Georgie Mihailovich for somebody. I don't know who starts in his place. He was supposed to be kind of the more creative midfielder. He wasn't. Do you put Sebastian Salcedo there? I don't know. Do you put Johnny Cardoso there? I would prefer Johnny, honestly. I want to see him play for the U.S. I think this is a good low-stakes game for him to play. And, again, I don't think Mihailovich played well at all. So if you're going against Dominican Republic and you already know that Georgie Mihailovich didn't put in a good shift against Costa Rica, you can afford to change him out and find someone else. Because if Johnny comes in or Sebastian Salcedo comes in or anyone else comes in to play that, midfield position, that, one of the dual number 8s, if you will, if someone else comes in and plays okay, then great. If they play poorly, well, there's no guarantee that Mihailovich wouldn't have played poorly because he didn't have a good first match. Also, if you play poorly, it's just very unlikely the Dominican Republic is able to hurt you as badly as Costa Rica did. But I think the front line also would have maybe another change. Maybe a Salcedo plays for Benji Michel. I think Salcedo needs to start, whether that's at the 10 or at the right wing position. I don't know, but I do think he needs to start. So yeah, that's kind of it. It's really hard to take any macro evaluations about either this team or this program because this team is, as we mentioned in the last one, this is not an A squad even for this age group. It's not even a B squad. That's because of the limitations on who you could call in and who was available. That's fine. But this team still can be better than what it performed against Costa Rica. But at the end of the day, you got 3 points in your opening match, which is what matters. You beat the team that you absolutely had to beat. You put Costa Rica fighting to try to get out of the group, and you're in the driver's seat to get out of the group. And that's what matters. So again, U.S. wins 1-0 over Costa Rica in their first match of Concacaf Men's Olympic qualifying. The next match will be on Sunday, March 21st, against Dominican Republic at 7 p.m. When I say it's at 7 o'clock start, make sure you're in front of your TV at 7 o'clock. CONCACAF tends to be a little late, but not anything bad. So yeah, Dominican Republic on Sunday. If you get a win there, you've got 6 points. And honestly, I think that means you're through, no matter what happens really in the Mexico and Costa Rica game. Although you do hope for a draw or a Mexico win in that Costa Rica-Mexico game. I'll do a recap for you next week after that game, but I think I'll merge that with a preview of the 2 friendlies we have coming up next week on the 25th and 28th. We'll go over the roster and preview those opponents, Jamaica and Northern Ireland, as well as review what happened against Dominican Republic. Be on the lookout for that. Thanks for tuning in. Again, subscribe to Soccer Down Here on whatever podcatcher you are listening right now. You will get every episode of this show, as well as every episode of Soccer Down Here, the daily show, Soccer Over There, and all the other content that the SDH network puts out. Again, I'm Bart. I'm out.